everyone, this is Faith at Faith and Books. How are you doing? I'm sitting out here. It's around maybe noon or 12:30, and it's pleasant out. It's warm, but it's pleasant. I'm on my back porch, and you might hear my chickens or planes going over or birds or whatever. But I'm doing this outside because starting tomorrow it's supposed to get super hot, like really hot, between 92 and 98 every day of the week. So I'm not looking forward to that. But so I thought I'd better take advantage and be outside as much as possible when it's somewhat nice out. Anyway, I've decided I'm finally going to do my 10 most influential books list. And this is inspired by that list about the 10 books that most influenced C.S. Lewis. But before I do that, I want to show you my book haul, because tomorrow my granddaughter's getting baptized. She was born in December. And so I went to the Catholic gift and bookstore and got little gifts for her. But I also wanted to pick up some books. So I have not read this book by C.S. Lewis. And so I got this one. So that's sort of a Journey with the Inklings inspired. And also, the whole list about Lewis, and the Peter Kreeft list, which included lots and lots of Lewis. So anyway, I'm in a C.S. Lewis mood. Still have to get my eye fixed. Which eye is it? This one. But I'm so looking forward to being able to really read again, like real books. So anyway, The Weight of Glory. I don't know anything about this one. The other one that they had was The Problem of Pain. And I had read the other ones. They had The Four Loves. They had the book on the Psalms. They had other ones that I had already read. So this one I haven't read. So looking forward to that. Then I think I mentioned when I was talking about G.K. Chesterton a couple of videos ago that I had lost The Everlasting Man. I don't know what happened to it. So I saw this and I thought, I need this book. I need to have it on my shelf because I loved it so much. So I got that. And then, because I've been doing this church history course and also reading John Henry Cardinal Newman, and the first book we read for the Theology Book Club was how they put the canon together, the New Testament. And so I've just been very, very interested in church history. I've been wanting to read more of the early church fathers anyway for several years, and I'm now more motivated. So I got this book by Jimmy Akin. I should know how to say his name because I sometimes watch him on YouTube. And I like him a lot. He always has a cowboy hat on, and he has kind of a southern accent, but he's smart as a whip, and he really knows his stuff. And so this is his book, The Fathers Know Best, Your Essential Guide to the Teachings of the Early Church. So that looked good. And then this might have like excerpts from them. Yeah, it does. But I wanted to read like more substantively, like really read what they wrote in context instead of having people interpret for me. So I got this book, which seemed like the closest thing to it. 4 Witnesses, The Early Church in Her Own Words, Clement of Rome, Ignatius of Antioch, Justin Martyr, and Irenaeus of Lyon. Or Lyon, that's how you say it. Anyway, so this looks like it's just lots and lots. I don't know. He's still interpreting a lot. I just want to, maybe you have to order online. I just want to get like the writings of Clement of Rome and read those. I don't necessarily want somebody else translating it for me. I mean, it has to be translated, but I mean just sort of interpreting what they're saying. I'd like to just read it on my own. But anyway, these 2 books will be good starts for me, I think. So, okay, so that's the haul. Now let me get into the 10 books that I think were most influential on my life. So these are books that I think formed core values for me. There are plenty of books that had impact over the course of my life, but a lot of them were negative, or the impact wore off after a while, or I wound up rejecting sort of that worldview, or it didn't have sticking power. So these are the 10, and I have other books that, maybe would be 11, 12, 13 or something, but these are the top 10 as of right now when I'm trying to make a list about. So these are the books that I feel like formed my core being. So the first one is kind of a cheat because it's a series, and it's the Little House books. And I cannot find the first one, Little House in the Big Woods. Does that happen to you? When, like, I can't find the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia either. The first book goes missing. But anyway, this is cheating. It's, of course, more than one book. But I started reading these books in 3rd or 4th grade, and I read them every year through college. And then I read them again to my children a couple of times as they were getting older. And I think that they're the reason I have chickens and why I have gardens. And I just love the writing style. I think it taught me to appreciate good writing, the characterization, just the story of the family and what they went through, their adventures, their hardships. It's just, I think it really formed me. I read lots and lots of books of this sort growing up, or that had to do with nature and that kind of thing. And I've always been sort of an armchair naturalist, and not really that adventuresome. But I do think these books really, really had a huge impact on me. And I love them. I still love them. And speaking of that, I really appreciate that on BookTube, Lizzie Faye Loves Books always hosts a Little House read-along in February. I can link to her below. And also, just a couple days ago, Anne at A Sense of Wonder announced a reading challenge for August, which is called The Prairie Trail, where she sort of combines her love for Little House. And she was gone to the museums and stuff. I haven't done that. But with her love of the Oregon Trail computer game, which I never played. So that was after my time. And my kids didn't really play it either, because I think it was kind of old and other things had taken over when they were little. But anyway, so I'll link to her reading challenge because it sounds really fun. So I thought I'd mention that. Anyway, the first book or set of books, a series of books, is the Little House series. Then the next one that I remember reading about the age of 12, I'm pretty sure I was 12 when I first read it. I've read it 5 times, I think, in my life, is David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Now, I'm not even like the biggest Dickens fan, but this book hit me so deeply, and I loved it so much. And you know what? It's really annoying me. I can't remember David's aunt's name. How come I can't remember that? Where is she? Anyway, I loved all the characters. I loved David. I loved Peggotty, Mr. Peggotty, Emily, Steerforth. I didn't love Steerforth. But Mr. Micawber, Agnes's father, just all these wonderful, wonderful characters. And I think it really, that's what I was going to say about Little House. I really think there's a strong sense of right and wrong in the Little House series, because of course it's written for children. But I just remember reading that and like when she was naughty, or when somebody was naughty in the book, or somebody did something bad. I remember really being so impressed by that. How are they going to deal with it? And in this, I guess that's what coming of age is. You're coming out of childhood and you're realizing that there's a lot of evil in the world that you have to try to cope with. And David certainly has to do that, just right from when he's an orphan, and the Murdstones come into his life, and being at that cruel boarding school, and Steerforth's betrayal, and just, who are the good people in it, who are the bad people. Uriah Heep is another great villain. So just sort of a sense of right and wrong and how we cope in the world. I think this really made an indelible impression on me growing up. And then the third one is also along the same lines. It's To Kill a Mockingbird. Wait, am I putting that right? Oh, like that? Maybe? Yeah, here we go. To tell you the truth, I have not reread this in a while. So I've reread those other ones, but I haven't, and I feel like I should. I got so turned off when I heard about the Ghost Set of Watchmen and that it was a bad sequel. That really upset me. I think it kind of I don't know, did something to my relationship with the author, Harper Lee. But anyway, this book made such an impression on me as a child. I loved Atticus. I loved seeing the world from Scout's point of view. And again, it was just, someone trying to maintain their integrity, someone understanding there's right and wrong, and that, no matter what, you have to try to live a life of integrity. And Atticus was like that. And just it's just beautifully written. And Boo Radley, that's such an interesting aspect to the story. And it's just a wonderful book, which I really, really appreciated. And really, I think it was the first time I really thought about racism. When did I read it? Maybe 13 or 14. I probably had thought about that beforehand. But, as I was maturing, this sort of gave me a sense of what justice should be. So To Kill a Mockingbird. Then I don't have the next one, but I remember in college, I was trying to think of what books did I read in college that left a sort of an indelible mark on me. And I came up with something that's probably, at first I wouldn't have thought of it, but when I remembered it, I was like, yeah. And I remember reading the play Antigone, and I don't even remember who wrote it. Was it Sophocles? I don't know who wrote Antigone. But I just remember how it moved me. And part of it was that my brother had died. And so I kind of was relating to Antigone and the death of her brother, whose name I can't even remember, and how she was defying the king, her father. And it was just, to me, it was a heart-wrenching. But it also made me realize that there is such a thing as natural law, because here in this beautiful Greek tragedy, there's this tension about, do we obey the laws of man, or do we obey a higher law? And Antigone feels compelled to obey that higher law, to bury her brother. And I just found it very moving. And again, it sort of convicted me that there's such a thing as right and wrong, and that we need to be on the right side. We need to do what's right. So Antigone would be my fourth. And then the last one is the brothers Karamazov, I always say it wrong. The brothers Karamazov. Karamazov. Could be Karamazov. But anyway, this book, I've now read this 3 times. And this book is so, to me, like the word is astonishing and also revelatory. Because, and even now, if I was going to sit down and read it, I think I would be like, what's going to happen? How can this make sense? It's so disorienting when you first start it, for me anyway. I was like, what's the heck's going on? All these crazy people, and they don't understand. Everything seems so urgent and hysterical. And then, and you have no idea, at least I don't have any idea how it's going to unfold. Last time I read this, I took notes. What did I say? I can't even remember. Why does something come? I can't read my own writing. But anyway, I love this book so much. And again, and I read this, as an adult for the first time. And just a deep conviction about the meaning of life and the struggle between right and wrong, and just such a wonderful spiritual depth to this book. So that would be the 5th fiction. I forgot to say I'm dividing this list up into 5 fiction, or 5 books of literature, or whatever, and 5 nonfiction. So those were my 5 fictions. So a Little House series, David Copperfield, To Kill a Mockingbird, Antigone, and the Brothers Karamazov, or whatever, however you pronounce it. I have to ask somebody who speaks Russian. Okay, and then the other books are my nonfiction list, and I don't have a copy of the first one, but that would be something that I also read when I was 12 or 13 or 14, and that was The Diary of a Young Girl, or The Diary of Anne Frank. And I think that just, I related so much to her, and I was so appalled at her situation, and so charmed by her grace in such a terrible situation, and how, everything, it was just humans getting on each other's nerves and behaving like humans. And she was, rebelling against her mother as a teenager and all that kind of stuff, having a crush on somebody, and then all the little irritations. And yet at the same time, they were in this impossible situation. And she still believed in the goodness of humanity. And she was such an incredible writer for a young girl. She was incredible, deep thinker and writer. And so that book really, really impressed me and left a mark on me that that never went away. And I used to have a copy, and I think maybe my oldest daughter has it now. I don't know where it went. I don't know where the one copy that I had as a teenager, which I read many times, I don't know where that disappeared too. And then when my daughter was getting old enough, I went out and got her an edition, and she might have it. I don't know, but that's another one I would like to replace and keep in my library. And then, if you know my story at all, I was raised Catholic in an Irish Catholic home, mostly. And then when I was about 12, I lost my faith because my brother drowned suddenly. And it was a very traumatizing thing and had all kinds of repercussions in my family. And one of it was I just stopped believing in God. I couldn't believe God would be so cruel. And so therefore there must not be a God. And he was just something that we made up to make ourselves feel good. And I felt like that for years. And then I finally reverted. And my reversion was very, very slow. And I explored other faiths too. Once I realized, I was always curious. And it always depressed me to be either an agnostic or an atheist. I always found it emptying. Just an empty feeling. So I was never happy. And then once I realized I believed more than I didn't believe, I started exploring a lot. But then when I finally started to revert back to the faith of my childhood, there are some books that really helped me on the way. So, and I just rediscovered these. And one of them was due to, I think it was Christy Lewis, who we did this we did a read along a couple of years ago. And the first one is The Long Loneliness by Dorothy Day. And I had forgotten how much this affected me. And in fact, I don't know, she's fascinating. She's absolutely fascinating and very admirable. But I find myself like, I don't know, kind of like wrestling with her a lot. Because I guess I wish I was as radical as she. I wish my response had been as radical as hers. But anyway, this is a very interesting book. She was not raised Catholic, just nominally Christian, maybe. She became a communist. She lived this bohemian lifestyle. She was a journalist. Then she converted to Catholic. She had a child out of wedlock. She converted to Catholicism, and she started the hospitality houses, the Catholic Worker newsletter and newspaper, and the hospitality houses. And she's amazing. It says the autobiography of the legendary Catholic social activist. So this book really kind of warmed my heart to Catholicism again. And then this book, this is another book that really affected me, and it was Thomas Merton's The Seven-Story Mountain. But I only read chunks of it. My father had an edition, a hardback edition, and I would just sit and read chunks of it sometimes. But it was very impressive. And then I finally, was it last year or a couple of years ago, I read the whole thing from cover to cover instead of just picking it up and reading chunks. And amazing. I have heard that this book, The Seven-Story Mountain, it says an autobiography of faith, more people attribute their conversion to Catholicism to this book than any other. He was also nominally Christian, not really growing up in any faith. His father was an artist. His mother died when he was young. He was very bohemian. He grew up in a very bohemian kind of intellectual, kind of atheistic atmosphere for the most part. And then he experiences a conversion, and he even becomes a monk eventually. So they both came from like bohemian backgrounds, converted to Catholicism. She led this radical life as an activist for the poor, and he led this radical life as a monk. And he was also a great writer. So this book was, and I recently reread it. Oh my gosh, I like was floating on a cloud for a couple of weeks afterwards. It was such a tremendous read. So I really, really enjoyed rereading this and revisiting it. And I can understand why it was a book that influenced me to revert. And then this book, this is a brand new copy because my old copy fell apart. When I was a freshman in college, I took this Introduction to the Old Testament. I remember it really confused me. Like, it wasn't a good class, and I just was more confused than having any sort of sense of knowledge, or like I'd gained something by being in that class. And I remember a couple of years after that, seeing this book on my aunt's bookshelf, and telling her, I had this class, and it was so dissatisfying. I really just felt more confused than ever. And she said, oh, you got to read this book. She actually went on a tour of the Holy Land with this priest, Father Lawrence Boadt. And I read the old book that had fallen apart. This is the new edition. And it really changed my understanding of how to read the Bible. And I think it also really influenced my way back. I became far, if you're ignorant of the Bible, you can be really, really judgmental of it. But if you understand its context and culture, and how it's put together and what it actually is, I think it's much easier to appreciate it and admire it and get a lot more out of it. And this did that for me. It really changed my mind. It really opened my mind. And I have read since that, because this came out in 1984, and I know there's been a lot of archaeological digs and stuff like that. Like, they found out a lot more about the Jews, the Israelites or the Hebrews. And they've done an updated version with two other people, because he's since passed away. But they've updated this book because it's such a classic. They've updated it now, so I really want to get the new updated version where they include more recent archaeological finds and that sort of thing. So I'm looking forward to that, to getting the new edition that's come out. Anyway, so this is this my number 9? Yeah, this is my number 9. And then number 10. So when the whole, I reverted to the faith, the Catholic faith, and then there were the sex abuse crisis. And it was so vile and demonic and disgusting. And I was very, felt very alienated and very betrayed. And the only thing that kept me hanging in there was that my pastor at the time was so open and vulnerable about what a terrible thing. He was grieving. He was in shock. He was horrified. And I think it was his vulnerability and his, I would say, well, I don't want to, I'd be angry and I wouldn't want to go to church. And I would think, I don't want to let Father down. So I'd go anyway, and that got me through that connection. But for many years, I really struggled. And my little escape valve was that maybe I could always go to Orthodoxy, to Eastern Orthodoxy. And every Saturday morning, I used to listen to Sister Vasa, but she's had quite a story lately. Every Saturday morning, I'd listen to Sister Vasa. Or sometimes I would think, I'll go to the High Anglican community that's here. I can always go there if I can't stand being Catholic anymore. But what I think really, and I was struggling with that for years. This came out in 2017. But I think what clinched it and made me realize that I actually did believe the truths of the faith, in spite of the fact that the human element, the institution, could be so vile and corrupt and downright evil. And so I learned to separate the truths of the faith from the fallen people. I mean, even Jesus had Judas, right? And there's nowhere else to go. You go to any other church, and they're going to have problems too. So you know, it's just that we live in a fallen world, but I want to be where the fullness of the truth is. And this book, The Light of Christ, by Thomas Joseph White, O.P., he's an order of preachers, he's a Dominican. This is an incredible book. It presents the Catholic faith in such a concise, readable, logical, well-written way. And it really sort of clinched it for me. And this guy now, he was in the Dominican house in Washington, D.C. I'm pointing that way because that way is Washington, D.C. And he's in one of my favorite groups. I'll link to a video of them. It's the Hillbilly Thomas. Because after Thomas Aquinas. But anyway, it's a great. I'll link to my favorite song by them. It's a bluegrass band that he was in. I think he helped start it. But now, since the election of Pope Leo, I saw an interview with him, and he is now the rector of the Pontifical University in Rome or something. So he's over in Rome now. I didn't even know that. So anyway, so this book, The Light of Christ, is number 10. And I think all those 10 books, if you read all those books, you'll know who I am. So, and I could include others, but I'm going to end there. All right, and I've gone on, as usual, long enough. So I'll say goodbye, and I will talk to you later. Happy reading.